Man, the Gen 1 Pokemon era truly was a strange time. All we had were glitchy games and passionate fans creating the wildest rumors, like Mew under the truck or the infamous Lavender Town syndrome. Today we know so much more, yet we're still discovering brand new secrets that many have never heard about. So here are 15 of those intriguing facts. At the beginning of Pokemon Red and Blue, before you receive your Pokedex or any Pokeballs, you're tasked with delivering Professor Oak's parcel from Viridian City, and if you're dedicated enough, you can battle Pidgeys and Rattatas for a couple hours and evolve your starter Pokemon. In the international games, this is totally fine, but in the Japanese versions, this basically breaks your game. See, at this point you still don't have your Pokedex, and you've technically registered more than one Pokemon, so the game will assume you have your Pokedex when you return to Professor Oak. As a result, Oak will want to look at your Pokedex instead of accepting his parcel, and you will be soft-locked with no way to progress further in the game. Funny enough, this glitch is still present in the international version of Pokemon Yellow, if you somehow catch another Pokemon. You can fish inside of gyms. I'm not kidding, this fact blew me away. Some of you might know that you can fish inside of Cerulean City's gym, as well as surf and even catch Pokemon there. But did you know that you can fish for Pokemon and catch them inside of any Kanto gym, specifically on the Pokemon League statues near the entrance? You can even surf on them too. Though I tried surfing for an encounter, but it's pretty much impossible since you can't surf beyond this one tile, so I resorted to just fishing and ended up catching a Goldeen. Since these water mechanics aren't limited to just one or two random tiles, it's safe to assume that these statues canonically have water flowing on them. However, in the remakes, this is clearly not the case and they're purely for decoration. Did you know that there's invisible PCs scattered across the Kanto region? The first one is found in a building at the bottom right of Celadon City, and over in the corner you can find a fully usable Pokemon PC. Now this building layout is almost identical to a Pokemon Center, so I guess we just reused the layout, but forgot to remove the trigger for the PC. There are also some hidden PCs in the Safari Zone, specifically in Rest Houses 2, 3 and 4. While the layout of these buildings are completely different from a Pokemon Center, the coordinates for the PC are the exact same. Of course, you need the ability to walk through walls to access these PCs, but they're definitely there, and usable if you manage to get to them. A common trait amongst Gen 1 trainers is that a lot of them seem to possess whips, like a lot of them. However, in the remakes, they're completely absent, besides maybe one trainer class. For example, Psychic Gym Leader Sabrina had a whip, but in later games they emphasized her psychic powers instead. Early sprites show that even Trainer Red possessed a whip, but it was removed at some point in development. The reason trainers initially had whips is because of an early concept for the games where trainers would fight alongside their Pokemon, according to Ken Sugimori. The idea was scrapped because it didn't make much sense, and it would take focus away from the creatures themselves. Though it's interesting that part of this idea still made it into the final game. The 8th episode of the anime was even about a trainer that whipped their Pokemon. Did you know that the Great Ball is actually more effective than the Ultra Ball in specific cases? First off, there are 3 ways of calculating capture rates in Gen 1. A high chance of catching a Pokemon with a status condition. Ultra Balls work the best in this scenario. How high the Pokemon catch rate itself is. Ultra Balls work best with low catch rate Pokemon, but the higher the catch rate, the less the type of ball matters. And the HP level. Ultra Balls are most effective when the Pokemon HP is below half. So many have found out that by doing the math, Great Balls are actually more effective than Ultra Balls if a Pokemon has a high catch rate, no status condition, and has above half its HP. Keep that one in mind for your next playthrough. Did you know that Pokemon wasn't supposed to be called Pokemon? Satoshi Tajiri initially pitched the game as Capsule Monsters, inspired by Gachapon machines and Capsule Kaiju from Ultraman. The creatures themselves were named Capumon, and you can see the Gachapon influence in the concept art for the Pokeball. Capsule Monsters was actually very close to becoming the series name. As far as we know, it was the project name until 1995. But Tajiri struggled to trademark it, and Nintendo finally settled with the name Pocket Monsters. However, in the West, the name conflicted with the copyright of the toy line Monster in My Pocket. To avoid any conflict, the localization name simply shortened to Pokemon. In Gen 1, every Pokemon is assigned an index number alongside the Pokédex number. For example, while Bulbasaur is number 1 on the Pokédex, Rhydon is listed number 1 on the index list. But instead of ending at 151 Pokemon, the index list goes up to 190, indicating that 39 Pokemon were planned but cut later in development. These scrapped Pokemon are randomly scattered across the index list, and they're represented by missing no. So technically, each missing no is just one of the 39 scrapped Pokemon, and if you happen to catch one and trade it into a Generation 2 game, the index number will convert into a Johto Pokemon. Let's take index number 86 for instance. If you trade it to Generation 2, it will turn into a Delibird. Now this doesn't mean that Delibird was scrapped from Generation 1, but rather that Delibird's data matches the index value of the scrapped Pokemon, which could have been anything. And outside of the index list, all of the Generation 1 glitch Pokemon also convert into specific Gen 2 Pokemon if you find a way to trade them. I'll put a link in the description where you can look at all the index and glitch Pokemon conversions. Pokemon Red and Blue are very broken games, so of course you can catch Pokemon above level 100. It's actually pretty easy to do. Just fly to Viridian City, get the old man to teach you how to catch Pokemon again, then fly to either Cinnabar Island or the Seafoam Islands, and surf along the coast. You'll encounter the most random Pokemon over level 100, including Missing No and various glitch Pokemon. Though be careful, because Pokemon over level 100 are obviously very strong. If you manage to catch one though, you can use rare candies to level it up all the way up to level 255. Using another rare candy will reset the Pokemon's level back to 0, and using it in battle will reset the level back to 100, so you're better off keeping this as a trophy in your PC. Gen 1 had some strange HM rules. In Red and Blue, Farfetch'd and Dodrio could learn Fly, meanwhile Charizard couldn't, but in Pokemon Yellow, Charizard could learn Fly, and if you traded it back to Red and Blue, the move would be usable both in battle and outside battle. Bonus fact, if Snorlax uses the move Metronome in Pokemon Stadium, there's a chance it picks Fly, and you get to see the greatest battle animation in Pokemon history, Flying Snorlax. You can also get an idea of how Dodrio flies too. Now, you might be familiar with Gorochu, the scrapped evolution of Raichu. Many people don't know that Gorochu was technically referenced in Pokemon Red and Blue. In the Pokemon Lab on Cinnabar Island, you can talk to an NPC and trade a Raichu for an Electrode. And once you exchange Pokemon, the NPC will say that his Raichu evolved. Canonically, I guess you can say his Raichu did in fact evolve. But the truth is, this is probably just a translation template error. You see, this whole exchange was taken from the Japanese Pokemon Blue version, where you trade in a Kadabra or a Haunter, two Pokemon that evolved via trading, and in the English Red and Blue, you trade in a Raichu or a Poliwhirl, and the same text template plays when you trade in Poliwhirl, even though you need a Water Stone to evolve it. Speaking of evolution stones, in Pokemon Red and Blue, you could evolve Pokemon that required evolution stones without actually using them. You see, the data for each evolution stone corresponds to a specific Pokemon, and you need to have that Pokemon in your party for this to work. For the purpose of this segment, let's evolve Pikachu. First, get into a trainer battle with Pikachu at the top of your party. Make sure that it levels up during this battle. Then switch it out for Growlithe, since it corresponds to the evolution stone. Then finish the battle with Growlithe, and that should initiate an evolution screen for Pikachu. A very useful method, but it was patched out in Pokemon Yellow. And lastly, here's probably the nerdiest fact on the list. It's the introduction Nidorino. While Professor Oak is giving his introduction speech, a Nidorino appears on screen, but the game plays a Nidorina cry. Of course, one of the buggiest games out there literally starts off with a bug. And that about does it for all the obscure Gen 1 facts I have today. Let me know which one shocked you the most. and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe, because I'll be posting more. Thanks for watching and see you next time.